Before the video starts, we're going to react to PSA Scandal. If you don't know PSA, they are a company that's grading card like a 10 to a 0, and they grade every card. Like, I got Pokemon cards, I was thinking of sending them in, but after watching this video, I'm quite unsure about it, because even though it's a $30 card, like, it's not that much, but it's a little bit of cash. It's just double the profit of what I bought it. I don't wanna support a shady business, and that the thing that sucks. There's also a lot of other authenticators out there, but the PSA it got the monopoly of the game. So if got a other rating from another company, it's not gonna be as much as the PSA. So yeah, it's kind of scummy of them to do. So in this, we will react to how they're doing it, what scam thing and scummy things they're doing to the customers that grading in, and believe me, god damn. But yeah, enough talking. Let's get back to it. So we got investigating the biggest scam in Pokemon.
PSA has the power to turn a singular Pokemon card into a multi-million-dollar asset.
Indeed. This video is about PSA with the grading and whole thing. And I never heard of it. I just saw some of my content. Okay. I've seen a lot of creators doing it, and I was thinking like, I'm gonna give my own opinion because, you know, I'm doing this.
When Logan Paul's ultra rare Pikachu Illustrator was given a PSA 10 grade, it became worth over $16 million.
God damn! $60 million? That's fucking insane. I know he unboxed it, but I didn't know it was worth 60 million.
A single grade point lower and the card's value drops to 1.4 million. But
Damn.
when one company has the ability to create or erase millions of dollars with a single number, there's bound to be corruption. And a recent pattern of major screw-ups has many people suspicious of PSA. They've authenticated cards that were altered to look perfect. Their grading system has been exposed as
PSA consistently inconsistent. I think that's a fake and a real.
They've even admitted to
PSA destroyed my PSA 10 Electro Deox Pop 38. That's fucked up.
Straight up destroying high value cards during their process. And those are just the mistakes that we can 100% prove. There are countless grading decisions that happen every single day that are losing people hundreds, thousands, and in extreme cases,
damn, they're so
millions of
expensive.
dollars.
What
which
the?
is why when you dig deeper into PSA, the more insane it becomes that a multi-billion-dollar industry revolves around a tiny number on a piece of plastic. Before PSA became synonymous with corporate greed, they were actually providing an extremely consumer-friendly service. PSA, which stands for Professional Sports Authenticator, offered a universal standard to determine how much a card was worth. Think back to elementary school at the lunch table. Your friend has a bag of chips, and you're willing to give up your ding-dong in exchange for it. The chips
What do you mean by that?
objectively more valuable than the ding-dong, but if both of you are satisfied with the trade, then it really doesn't matter. Sports cards and trading cards used to be the same way. Maybe I wanted your Charizard card, and you wanted my Pikachu.
I mean, imagine how many people that has traded away their Charizard back in the days because, yeah, I want to get the Mew, I want to get Mewtwo, I want to get, I don't know, Blastoise because I like Pokemon. And then later years, you just figure out it's worth millions and you just basically rob without knowing it. Crazy.
Card. We'd just swap them and be done with it. But eventually how rare the cards were became a factor to consider in the trade. All of those factors is what PSA considered to determine how much a card was worth, which resulted in people paying big money for cards in all different niches. PSA essentially created the industry standard guide of what matters when buying or selling cards.
I don't even know
in
this.
A close inspection, a trained PSA grader validates a card's authenticity, ensuring that it is officially licensed merchandise and not.
The only thing I know is how if it's ripped, bent, and like that. That's the only thing I know.
Not a knockoff. They assess any potential damage such as rips, tears, scuffs, folds, and finally they give a grade to the card's overall condition on a 1 to 10 scale. And at the end they carefully encapsulate the card in a protective case to preserve its condition with a label displaying its name and official PSA grade. Before PSA was rotting the industry from its core, it was actually meant to preserve the integrity of it. But as their power and influence grew, they started moving away from being a humble service for hobbyists and developing into a corporation fully fixated on profits.
That's
PSA
fucked
expanded
up.
their company beyond just grading cards. They integrated with eBay to create the PSA Vault, which helps store, list, sell, and ship trading cards for their customers. So if you wanted to sell your recently graded card, you could have them take care of the entire selling process from start to finish with little effort. PSA even offered a buyback service where they would purchase the card directly after grading. And some interpret this as kind of a conflict of interest. You're handing a company your card, they're deciding how much it's worth, and then they're offering to buy it from you themselves. If
Yeah, that's kind of sketchy because if you them buying themselves back, they can literally grade it however they want. Like they can be scammers. Like it's I don't know about that because it feels like they can say yeah it's a 8 or 9, but it's a 10.
they plan on reselling the card for a profit, they have every incentive to convince you it's worth a little less than it actually is.
Yeah, what I
It's
was
like when
just
Rick
talking
from
about.
Pawn Stars calls in one of his buddies to tell you what your rare artifact
The boy got the expert for expert. Like I can show him this skincare for the face, and he'll be like, yeah, I got an expert for that.
is worth, and
You got everything.
almost every time it's worth way less than what you thought it was. From
Yeah.
there, PSA's parent company, which is confusingly called Collectors, also acquired rival grading services Beckett and SGC, getting them closer to becoming a monopoly. Today, PSA and its sister companies take up 80% of the total market, with PSA
God
accounting
damn!
for a whopping 72%. And that dominance comes with an immense responsibility. The trading card market is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and basically every collector on the planet relies on PSA's labels to determine that each card they received was authentic and in perfect condition. And when PSA makes mistakes, they aren't just minor disputes. They have the potential to be catastrophic errors that can bankrupt a collector. But before we get into that, we all live busy lives that want some two musial building base. In 2017, a 1952 Stan Musial baseball card sold for $2,800. It had slight imperfections, including a black dot on the border, as well as a few small scuffs on his jersey. All things considered, the card was still in great condition, and received a PSA grade 9. 7 months later, another copy of the card was sold, this time a PSA grade 10, for a price of $28,100.
But
sold,
that
it
looks
received
way
a
different.
PSA grade 10 for a price of $28,100. The problem is, these were the same exact card. Natural markings on the back of both were identical, meaning that someone had covered up its imperfections and resubmitted it to PSA, got a higher grade, and made tens of thousands of dollars.
That's fucking insane that you can just do that and get more money.
PSA is supposed to inspect every card closely before giving it a grade. It checks for scratches, scuffs, and imperfections, but it also ensures that the card is both authentic and unaltered. Like when you and I look at a PSA 8, 9, or 10, we just kind of say, yeah, I mean, it looks perfect. But PSA's job is to notice the tiny things that we never would. Maybe someone repainted a tiny white chip on the edge, or they trimmed a fraction of a millimeter off the border, or they managed to fix a crease that used to be there. And even
How the fuck do they fix a crease?
still, you might wonder what the big
You
deal
gotta be good at
is.
your
I mean,
job
if a
then.
card can be restored to pristine condition, then why should it matter if it was original or not? Well, it's because the history of a card is a major factor in its value. To see a card preserved for almost 70 years without a single flaw doesn't just make it worth more money, it's also just objectively cool. And this is not just true for cards, it's really true for about any.
But who actually just keep old cards in perfectly condition? Like, you're not gonna think of a card. You're like, yeah, okay, yeah, I got my, we say baseball. Yeah, I got my favorite baseball player. Like, are you gonna keep it always in the perfect condition, like through the years, like 70 years? I don't think. Maybe some people will, but no, I don't think so.
anything that is rare. The flowing hair silver dollar sold for $10 million in 2013. That's because this coin was the first dollar coin issued by the United States federal government in
Didn't know they had a dollar
1794.
coin.
Somehow, someway, this little coin was preserved for 220 years.
God
If
damn.
nobody cared about preserving anything that was rare, then we'd all just buy one-to-one bootlegs. Authenticity matters, and PSA was meant to ensure all aspects of a card were authentic, but they messed up too many times to count. A Billy Maloney card from the early 1900s was purchased for $81 before being altered, regraded, and sold for a $900 profit. A
Fuck is,
1952 Mickey Mantle card was altered and resold for $14,800.
How could it fuck up this bad? If they are looking, if the card is altered and everything, they will clearly notice. Maybe some guys use words like, yeah, no, I'm not having the day.
Ironically, a separate Stan Musial card from 1948 had its edges trimmed and sold for a nearly $2,000 profit. By 2019, hundreds of examples of altered cards that PSA had
I'm about to start altering cards. It's gonna buy knockouts and alter them. Okay, no, I'm not actually gonna do that.
improperly graded had piled
Don't do
up,
that.
culminating in a class action lawsuit. The lawsuit went further.
You gotta
than
get a
accusing
lawsuit.
PSA of making a few mistakes. It argued that trained graders should have been able to recognize the alteration and alleged that PSA knowingly allowed them to enter the market regardless. The situation became too large for PSA to ignore, and they announced an internal investigation into
But then the cards that are out there, people are not gonna buy them as much because they are afraid that they're gonna be altered. Especially after this has come out, like the purchase of the cards is not gonna be that much.
the matter. Now,
It's
to
not gonna be that
fair,
much at
PSA
all.
grades millions of cards every year, and these alterations were done specifically by the seller to deceive trained authenticators into getting a higher grade. It is possible that these specific instances were genuine mistakes, and someone just figured out how to beat the authenticators.
True.
But whether PSA approved the cards knowingly or made a genuine mistake, the result for buyers was the same. Altered cards entered the market with legitimate grades that people thought were original.
Reporting collectors identified 1.4 million in sales of altered cards. Oh,
And could be
I
sold
feel bad for the
far more money than
buyers
they were
and
worth,
collectors.
which made people start to wonder if that little number in the corner could really be trusted. Sometimes customers are disappointed with the grade their card gets. Maybe they thought it was a
Yeah.
perfect 10, but PSA found a small imperfection that bumped it down to a 9. The customer now has two choices. They can accept the result and sell the card, or they can resubmit it to PSA and hope for a better result.
or alter it and hope for better results.
Pokemon card collector and YouTuber Pokemon Steven submitted approximately 10,000 cards to be graded by PSA over the past couple of years.
10,000. God damn, you got a lot of
A
cards.
little under 200 of his cards received unsatisfactory gradings. He believed that these cards were actually 10s, so he decided to resubmit them on the off chance that someone had made a mistake, and the results were shocking.
81 PSA 10s
God damn.
from the regrade experiment. 189 cards in total, so 108 cards did not make the cut.
81 of the resubmitted cards were bumped up from a PSA 9 to
But that's kind of crazy. Like, it shouldn't take like a regrading thing to get them like 10. If they are a serious company and they're doing so much, it wouldn't take a second regrade because they need to be 100% sure that it's a 9, a 10, a 5, a 0, because they need to know, because otherwise the business is not gonna make it in the long run. And that's just not. And if they do a regrade, I hope they at least get it for free.
a
But I
PSA
don't think so.
10. That's 42%. But he had not changed the card at all. The corners, the art, the surface were all exactly the same as when he submitted
That's
them the
crazy.
first time. The only thing that changed was the grade itself. And as discussed prior, the difference between these two grades can mean the difference of hundreds, thousands, and in extreme
Indeed.
cases, millions of dollars. What one inspector views as a 9, the other may view as a 10. And it's starting to seem like the only difference is how lucky you are when your card is being reviewed. PSA's grading system is supposed supposed to be an objective measurement of the card's condition, but as more controversies pile up, the grading seems subjective. Just goes to show that people are insane for paying such a massive premium for 10s. PSA is a huge scam, but resubmitting the card could also hurt its value. Another collector submitted over 100 cards to be regraded, 19 were given higher grades, but 34 of them were actually given a worse grade.
Damn.
Why does this happen? I mean, the rules are clear enough. 4 perfectly sharp corners, full original gloss, no stains or no scratches, with a slight allowance for printing imperfections. The problem is that a human grader still has to decide what counts as perfect. Maybe there's a small mark in the artwork that one grader notices while the other one doesn't. What one grader sees as a printing imperfection, another may view as an unnatural defect that bumps its grade down. So now, submitting to PSA is like gambling, especially when you consider the fees associated.
We like gambling. Okay, no, don't.
With this process. Submitting to PSA for grading costs $25 per card plus
We love
shipping,
gambling, though.
and they do offer slight discounts for bulk submissions. But think about it, if you get
Wait.
it plus shipping,
Value $25.
and they do offer slight
That-
discounts for bulk submissions. But think about it, if you get a low grade, your card could be worth less than $25, meaning it costs more to authenticate and grade than it's actually worth.
That's not
However,
worth it.
if your card is worth more, PSA will charge you insane amounts of money to do the exact
Please convince me it's a reasonable for P charge me more per card based on card value. That's fucked up. That's
same
fucked up.
grading as a worthless card, like Nico, who submitted his rare Mickey Mouse card that was worth $20,000 to PSA, only for them to charge him $1,000.
What the fuck? Nah, that's fucking insane. Nah, that's fucking scummy to do. 10,000? Nah, they greedy. They greedy.
For his perfect 10 grade, or Scruffy, who was charged $150 for a 10 grade 2021 Pokemon Sword and Shield Evolving Skies, and $600 for a 9 grade 2002 Charizard Reverse Foil.
What
There's
the
also
fuck?
John, who was told by PSA his card was worth $25,000, which is why he needed to pay them $1,000 to authenticate it, but then his card only sold for half the value they
That's fucking insane. They're like taking your shit like it surely costs more because it's a rare card. I mean, if I was working in as like a rare card and graded 10, I'd be like, God damn, that's cool. I would fucking charge them like 1k for that.
claimed it was worth. And no, they didn't give him a $500 discount and say, oops, we messed up. And he still made a great profit, but remember that the grading process for all of these cards is exactly the same. And you don't know what they are going to charge you until after they have already done the service.
No,
This has led
that's
some
fucked.
collectors to accuse PSA of intentionally having inconsistent grading so people will just keep submitting their cards for additional
Probably.
ratings. This is unlikely considering they've been
And the worst part is if you send it in and you got a good card, you wanna spend that cash. So doing it like a scam because we say you packed that 25k card, you wanna spend that 1k because you got 25k. But as you heard, he only got half of the price for that 10. Fuck man. Do I even wanna open more Pokemon cards?
Going to both overgrade and undergrade cards, then again, there are stories that make it easy to understand why some collectors still remain skeptical. The most notable example of this is when a collector named Preston submitted 30 separate Pikachu Zekrom GX cards to PSA for grading. He anticipated that most of them would be perfect 10s, but he was shocked to discover that none of them received a perfect grade, with the vast majority of them receiving PSA 9s. In spite of his disappointment, Preston opted to sell the cards through PSA's buyback service. However, he kept records of the serial numbers on his cards and searched them later online to discover that 11 of them had been listed as perfect 10s. Around
What
this
the-
time, a PSA 9 of this exact card was going for around $41.
So they want to buy back the card without you knowing it's a better card so they can get more profit out of it. Nah, PSA
While a
scammed me.
PSA 10 was nearly $200, meaning that PSA bought them from him as a 9 and sold them as a 10, and Preston missed out on around $1,500.
Holy
for all
15k, 1.5k. Nah, I would start a lawsuit. I wouldn't take that. I would take it personal. I wouldn't. No.
and cards. And this highlights the conflict of interest I mentioned before. The only people who can change a grade are PSA themselves. So if they are authenticating and buying and selling cards, they could theoretically change the grade of any card to maximum.
I think PSA could be good if they only focus on authenticating it, not selling to. I think that's the part they fucked up, because selling it and buying it, they can do so much scummy shit without you knowing. And now there's people that know their shit, and that's great because now they're getting called out for it. Otherwise, nah.
Their
It will
personal profits
go
on
way
the
longer.
sale.
As you can see, this is a legendary collection reverse PSA 10 Mankey that's listed on eBay by PSA themselves. But if this card is a PSA 10, then why does the back look like this? Because how are they listing a card that looks like this as a PSA 10 on
what?
eBay through the PSA
Yeah.
eBay account?
They need to get sued more. It's all
Yeah.
a scam. I hate that PSA is the one that got popular. However, PSA offered a different explanation. Supposedly, someone at PSA had seen Preston's original post on Twitter. They personally believed that the initial grading was too harsh and conducted a secondary manual review, resulting in updated gradings after Preston had already accepted their offer, which is shady. They conveniently realized
Indeed
that they
shady.
messed up only after they already bought the cards from him and resold them for a profit. Luckily for Preston, his story got a lot of traction online, and he claims that they privately rectified the situation with him, which I would hope means that they
They're just doing that so they look good, and they can do it more. Because if it was no one that would get attention, they wouldn't do shit to them. They wouldn't get back the cards.
gave him the money he deserves for the cards he unknowingly undersold to them. But that still doesn't feel like a satisfying conclusion, and it still didn't explain why
not.
the cards were
It's not.
undergraded in the first place. A fellow collector claimed that cards tend to be undergraded by PSA when they receive bulk quantities of the same card. I guess the logic is that when you look at the same card over and over again, you maybe start to see imperfections that
Yeah, but then there should be like one guy for each card, so there's no thing like that.
hair, or maybe the same person is just going over all of them and is like, surely they can't all be 10s, so here's a 9. But obviously that would be corrupt and unethical business practices. But most importantly, PSA did not make the situation right with Preston until after he went viral on social
Yeah.
media and gave
Was-
them bad
that's what I was
publicity.
saying.
Was Preston the only person this has ever happened to? Or
No.
was he just lucky enough to get attention online and put
He was
pressure on PSA
lucky to get
pay him
attention.
what they owed? But one of the most insane controversies that gained traction online was when PSA admitted they damaged someone's extremely rare card, and many saw this as the final nail in the coffin for their reputation. A man named Brian revealed that his PSA 10 Pokemon card was severely damaged while getting it reholdered by PSA, bumping it all the way down to a grade 6. The card
Damn.
was a sky-splitting Deoxys, an extremely rare card released in limited quantities in 2004 and never printed in English. There were very few copies like this and in his condition, making Brian's card almost impossible to replace. Now, Brian was getting his card reholdered. Basically what this means is he already submitted it before and it got a 10, but he was paying them to crack open the old plastic case and seal the exact same card into a
Nah, paying for not a package. Oh my god, I would take it so personal. Oh my god.
brand new holder. Collectors do this all the time if the slab gets scratched, cracked, or it just looks old. A fresh holder can make an expensive card easier to sell because buyers know the case is brand new and the card had recently been inspected. The problem is that the moment PSA cracks the case open, they're handling one of the rarest cards in the world, and if anything goes wrong, the damage is permanent. PSA acknowledged that they had damaged the card and offered to reimburse Brian the full market value, which
Okay.
they determined to be $20,000. He wasn't happy with this considering that the same
Oh!
card had sold.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that 20k. I will pay them for 45k because 20k, I could have got 45k.
for up to $45,000 around the same time, with others saying it was worth even more. Multiple people have told me that the Deoxys is $60,000 plus, and I personally have an offer over that. PSA fixed this issue. PSA got the $20,000 figure by averaging all of the recent sales of that same card, and this just seemed like a slap in the face because at best they're offering half and at worst a third of what it's actually worth.
Yeah.
But the problem is they caused the loss of the card and then gave themselves the authority to decide how much that loss was
That's
worth.
fucked.
And rather than accepting their deal, Brian took to the internet. Once again, the community was furious, and this specific situation ramped up to a whole new level once Moist Critical made a video about it.
This is where it gets extremely spicy.
I didn't know
Card
we made a
sold
video.
only a couple of weeks ago by PSA. And this is where it gets a little conspiratorial, but I think there's a lot of merit to it. There are people that are speculating that they didn't actually damage his card when reholdering it. The encapsulation process, it's a psyop. It's not real. What they're thinking might have happened is PSA, when reholdering that PSA 10 Deoxys that was submitted, they took it and then sold it themselves, and then instead gave him a 6, saying that it was damaged.
That's true. You know, Moist, he got the brain. I mean, it's Moist. Goddamn, but that's probably true.
It's down to a 6.
I guess PSA now stands for Pro Scam Artists.
Yeah.
Critical brought awareness to this dispute far outside the card collecting community, putting PSA under more pressure than ever before. Brian announced they had come to an agreement that he was satisfied with, indicating that he was compensated for the proper market value of his card. By this point, the pattern becomes a bit too familiar.
Yeah, they're only doing that because the post gets viral, and not because he didn't get it first. They offered him like 20k, and that's when it was not that viral. It wasn't that popping, but when PSA got more attention of it, and the reputation started going down, they fixed it. That's fucked up.
PSA rejected a complaint, the collector went public on the internet, and then the company changed their mind after the story went viral. There are dozens of other examples of PSA destroying their customers' cards, and you have to wonder if these individuals were ever given proper compensation. Probably not, because a massive YouTuber didn't make a video about them. And now I'm just genuinely curious if anyone watching has ever had this happen to them. Like,
No.
you submitted a card to PSA,
I was saying-
and you know for a
The fun part I was actually thinking I was opening a lot of Pokemon cards and then sending them in. But after this, hell fucking no. No PSA for me. Fuck that.
100% fact that they messed up your card and then sent it back but hoped that you'd never notice? Comment below if that happened. PSA's grade is supposed to be a symbol of reliability and prestige, but these days their reputation isn't much better than a sketchy pawn shop, and yet people are still sending in millions of cards to PSA every single year. But why? Well, the thing is, most collectors don't continue to use PSA because they trust them, they continue because they have no other realistic option. There are other companies that do gradings, but a card with a PSA label can sell for far more than the same card.
That's true. I'm not so into it, but I started when I opened the Pokemon cards. PSA is like, it's the shit, you know, it's the shit. If you see a PSA, you're like, yeah, it's authentic. If you see like other brands, you're gonna like, yeah, I don't know.
Card graded by a competitor. Leaving PSA for another authenticator would significantly cut down the overall value of someone's collection. And with the prices for some of these cards, we're talking about millions of dollars in value right down the drain. Boycotting won't work because all collectors would have to do it together. The market has decided that PSA is the gold standard, and it's almost impossible to go against what the market wants. As long as buyers seek out PSA graded cards, sellers will continue to sell them, which means that they will just have to deal with whatever nonsense comes with working with PSA. This is why monopolies are supposed to be illegal. But above all else, PSA is just another example of how any hobby or niche eventually gets hijacked and exploited by corporations.
It's so
the
fucking
same thing
sad.
happened with sneakers. Any regular person who wants to occasionally, maybe once a year or every other year, buy a nice pair of sneakers has to deal with insane price gouging, unavailability of sizes because collectors or resellers pay thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's also that with I think StockX and they have problems with authentic stuff, as I have read on Twitter, or not Twitter, or Reddit. I bought this shit on StockX, and I think it's the real shit. It looks like the real shit. I looked at the real shirt. Looks exactly like it, but it's a long process. It's a long process. It
Just to
sucks.
let a pair collect dust on a shelf. Shoes turned into a status symbol, and now it's trading cards. Actually playing with your Pokemon card could scratch the artwork, and wearing your sneakers could scuff them up, which will devalue them. Which is ironic because most people buy nice things because they want to actually use nice things, but the only way to protect the value is to avoid enjoying it for what it is. And unfortunately, no hobby is safe from this. It's only going
True.
to get worse. Once people begin to put a price on their favorite pastime, they make way for opportunists to take advantage of the hobby and get rich. PSA isn't just a tragic story of an innocent hobby being corrupted, it is a reminder that nothing you love is safe or sacred anymore. And PSA isn't the only business that's built an empire by telling people what their collectibles are worth. Pawn Stars made a fortune with these same questionable tactics. But check out this video to hear that
W
story.
video. W video. W video.